Stay with us. We are back in just 45 seconds. All right, so yeah, there's a little break, but anyway, we now turn to our next big story, which is unsurprisingly more on this Brett Kavanaugh situation, this unfolding horror at this hour. So Trump's Supreme Court nomination apparently already reeks of DC sleaze. White House spokesperson Rod Shaw confirms today that former Senator John Kyle will lead the efforts to guide whoever Trump nominates the Supreme Court, a role that for some reason is described as a Sherpa, which doesn't make any sense. Former Arizona Senator John Kyle will serve as, quote, the Sherpa as the president's SCOTUS nominee, according to officials involved with the process, tweets Kelly O'Donnell, who's a NBC reporter, I think. For perspective, the former Senator Kelly Ayotte acted as Sherpa for Neil Gorsuch. Sherpa is a key figure to smooth the confirmation process and build relationships with the senators who will vote. So Kyle will be in there helping things along for the process with Kavanaugh. So anyway, apart from helping Facebook figure out whether it's biased against conservatives, it isn't. Kyle spent his days as a senior counsel at the law firm of Covington and Burling, which is an interesting title because what he is in fact a lobbyist. He's been registered to lobby every year since 2015. In 2018, so far, he's registered to lobby on behalf of Qualcomm, JW Aluminum, and a copper mining company named Freeport McMoran. Freeport paid C&B, that's the law firm he works at, $20,000 last quarter, to dispatch Kyle to lobby the White House Council on Environmental Quality to add copper to its list of critical minerals, which would invigorate domestic mining. So that is, allow mining companies to pollute pristine lakes by mining copper. Sounds both boring and evil if you ask me, but what do I know? I don't charge $20,000 for what sounds like at most 50 minutes work, probably conducted over a single lunch, because I'm not rich. So yeah, and I'm not incredibly focused on doing such an evil agenda. So yeah, another one of Kyle's duper cool clients is the Judicial Crisis Network, a huge, secretive, and thoroughly shady nonprofit. It spent $7 million in ads persuading Republican senators to block Merrick Garland's nomination in 2016, and $10 million supporting Neil Gorsuch in 2017. It spent also on state-level races. Most of its money in 2016 came from another nonprofit, the Wellspring Committee, which in turn got most of its money from an anonymous donor. Wellspring doesn't have to disclose who that donor is. JCN paid Covington and Burling $215,000 last year to lobby in the Senate in support of Gorsuch's nomination, and Kyle, along with another lobbyist named William Wichterman, did the work there. And this doesn't make John Kyle any more or less corrupt in his role of nominee shepherd. They want the same thing. He's already trying to get the nominee through. Being paid by JCN doesn't make it any worse than he already is, which is very bad. But it is a great reminder that every single part of the process is oiled with money. And it's all the same problem every time. It's just a bunch of people with a bunch of big shady nonprofits that make tons of money somehow, and all the founders are very, very rich, and you get this whole entire situation, which is it's a big situation that it's a big racket that goes into confirming a Supreme Court nominee. So yeah, everyone involved is touch with these millions, completely secret dollars from some millionaire, maybe the Mercers or the Kochs or someone else entirely, whose millions have been made. That individual, more capable of influencing a democracy, more capable than influencing our democracy, than a million or 10 million other Americans. The JCN is merely a large son of the conservative judicial activist group, the Federalist Society. It's one of their associate ideas, one of their brainchilds. Leonard Leo, more specifically, the Federalist Society's executive vice president, I apologize, who was the man to connect Gorsuch with Trump in the first place. Leo's former media relations director from another organization told that told the Daily Beast, that the JCN is absolutely Leonard's group. There is a massive, well-funded network dedicated to remaking American judiciary into a conservative, pretty much wet dream by attacking union and abortion rights. This whole entire situation that is just deadly for liberals and for people who want to see a balanced country. And maybe we should be grateful to Jon Kyl for stepping up. It's helpful to be reminded as often, in as many ways as possible, the scale of what we're up against. It's not just the big baddies that we know, the Kochs and Mercers, or even the Trumps, or boring and mundane LLP, or your favorite bipartisan lobbying firm, are just as likely to help them out. And also, you may get a shady nonprofit devoted to ruining America for the next generation, helping in there. Shout out Judicial Crisis Network. But anyway, we turn now to our next story, which is also about the Supreme Court, and it is about Senate Democrats in the Supreme Court. Chuck Schumer says, "Fight Brett Kavanaugh or pay the price for the base." It was awful. I do apologize. All right. So anyway, Chuck Schumer is warning Democrats in the chamber that if they don't put up a brutal fight over the next Supreme Court justice, they will have hell to pay from the Democratic base, according to Senators' senior aides briefed on Chuck Schumer's message. Democratic leadership's response in the 2 weeks since Justice Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement has been in stark contrast to Senate Majority Leader's firm across-the-board rejection of any Obama nominee set up in 2016, which should already be worrying because we need to block this man right here. It's very, very important that we cannot have any type of possible situation when this guy gets in, because he will be devastating for liberals and really the country across the board, because he, as we discussed before, is very right-wing on all issues. It's pretty much just as simple as that. So yeah, the Democratic leadership's response in 2 weeks, it's been a little bit disconcerting. McConnell has been flexing the power of Majority Leader. He announced within an hour of the news of February 2016 death of Antonin Scalia that under no circumstances would the Democrat consider a nominee, would the Senate consider a nominee before the November election. But shortly after Kennedy announced his retirement on June 27th, Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, said that the Senate would do nothing to artificially delay the nomination. Like, Richard, come on, man. Like, do you want to be in power? Like, do you want to have actual influence? Do you want to play by the same rules that literally everyone else is playing at? Like, they're all riding around, like, the Republicans are running circles over you in actual bikes while you're, like, spinning out in training wheels. That is the problem that we've been in for the past decade, this whole situation. And their bikes have been turning in from bikes to racing bikes to motorbikes to those high-speed bikes where when you go around a turn, they race in Dubai and you can see them like all go around the turn. That's the bike the Republicans are riding. And like for context, it's just like the kind of bikes, like if I just search up right now, and I really want to show you the type of bikes I mean. Say race bikes here and race motorcycles. Sorry, excuse me. So yeah, search up race motorcycles, and you look at this on a computer. It says motorcycle racing sport. Like the picture of those people who are like almost at the ground. They're like horizontal to the ground when they go across a turn. That is the type of bike. I mean, that's the type of the Republicans are riding, and you're just literally you guys are riding literal training wheels bikes with frills on them. that's where we are right now, because of that statement right there. It was a very long, extended analogy. But Blumenthal quickly cleaned up a statement saying a deliberate process to confirm any nominee would necessarily take the Senate until beyond the November election. Since then, an organized effort to pressure Senate Democrats has conveyed the stakes for refusing to do so. What a fierce opposition will look like and how broad it will be remains to be seen, as Schumer lacks the full authority over the Senate that McConnell wielded in 2016. But as a major political party, just 2 seats shy of the majority, the Democrats are not as powerless as they sometimes act. Schumer has told colleagues that reviving complaints about Garland Garland process will be effective. It will be, referring to the Republicans' refusal to consider Barack Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland. And I mean, the Republicans who really have no answer for that. A lot of them, especially on the more like libertarian, like the not as hardcore side, like the not as brainwashed side, they think it's a little bit ridiculous that this was done in the first place, because this situation could very easily come back to bite them in the future. It was a very risky situation that can come back to bite them in the future. But it's going to be very tough. I think I can foretell that the Democrats will have a pretty difficult time keeping a united front on this situation, because they have a very, very clear, 3 very, very clear problems. Heitkamp, what's the other one? I forget her name. No, probably like Joe Donnelly and Joe Manchin. Those are the people who are going to have the most problems. Like the Trump conservatives, they're going to have a big problem. So yeah, so the advice has solid grounding both in polling and recent history. Democratic opposition to Neil Gorsuch, Trump's first Supreme Court nominee, centered heavily around McConnell's theft of his seat and unfairness of it all. Judge Gorsuch, after a lopsided 54-45 vote in the Senate, in the face of that strategy, is now Justice Gorsuch. It is unusual for Schumer or Democratic leaders to eschew an argument about the political process, which tend to be their comfort zone. In 2016, for example, Democrats made their argument against McConnell process launching We Need 9 campaign, that ultimately futile effort to rally the American people around the notion that the Supreme Court would have functioned best with a particular number of justices in it. And Mitch McConnell did not care, because he doesn't care about anything the Democrats try to do. He's running on his own plane. He's speeding past you in those motorbikes that when you turn, your knee almost hits the ground. Like one of those. Like that's where he's at right now. It's the truth. I'm sorry. Anyway, with his announcement Monday night that Trump has selected Brett Kavanaugh as the next justice, the question of how unified Schumer can keep his caucus will determine on the votes of Republican senators who have shown a semblance of independence, such as Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Cory Gardner, or Dean Heller. Those will come into play. Maybe, possibly, people like Rand Paul and Justin Amash could also be lobbied. So you got like 6 or 7 senators right there. Or really, you get like 6 senators right there who can reasonably lobby. You can push for people who are actually really trying to make a difference, and that could be very, very interesting in terms of an actual maybe resistance to the horrors put in place by this nominee passing. So anyway, Collins and Murkowski support legal abortion and constitutional right long upheld by the Supreme Court, but that Trump has pledged to overturn by appointing justices who want to criminalize abortion. The Federalist Society screened the Supreme Court applicants for Trump with overturning Roe v. Wade in mind, so there's a little mystery where Kavanaugh stands. As a judge, he tried to stall an immigrant minor held in detention from getting an abortion, though ultimately conceded that it would eventually have to be offered because, quote, the government will be required by existing Supreme Court precedent to allow the abortion. Now he has the opportunity to change that precedent and allow pregnant immigrant minors, to force them to have a baby instead. Anyway, we are going to get to 2 horrific stories next, so stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, August 1st, we have something very exciting coming to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. And I'm telling you guys, the news flash listeners, about this first, because I really know that you guys, if you listen to the podcast, you like good news, good stories, what you like to be informed about what's going on in the world. And on this show, cue theme music. On this show, it's called Spotlight. And what we're going to be doing is exploring some of the most important issues permeating our society today. The ones you hear about in the news that go away after a few days, and you're like,